she wrote about in Cross Creek. And this is what I think they would have said to us today if they were allowed to say it. So we're going to start with, of course, number one is Marjorie Kinnan Rawlings, and she was put in here in 1953. Here's what she might have said. How do you do? My name is Marjorie Kinnan Rawlings. I suspect I am the cause of all this fuss today. I was born Marjorie Kinnan in 1896 back in Washington, D.C. As a writer, I always wanted to drop the Rollins name, but alas, I had used it too long to do that. Did I mention that I was a writer? Well, yes, I did manage to write a few things, but none of them were very good until I came to Cross Creek. Charles and I bought this lovely little farm with an orange grove a few miles from here back in 1928. Right away I realized that my new wilderness surroundings and the colorful folks who live there might be all that I ever needed to write about. Between working my orange grove and getting rid of Charles, my first books were slow in coming. But they came, and if I might say so, some were pretty good. My editor, Max Perkins, thought so too, and started sending me money for stories like my first one, Jacob's Ladder. My friends in the not too far away Big Scrub provided me with a great material for my books like South Moon Under and The Yearling. My readers seemed to like them all, but The Yearling turned out to be my best. It won me the Pulitzer-Prize in 1939, and they even made a movie out of it. However, my own story I told in my book, Cross Creek. Many of my friends I wrote about in that book are right here around me. Now please go and pay them a visit. I know you've heard by now I did not want to come here in 1953. I was only 57 years old, too young for here or anywhere other than Cross Creek. But I'll let Norton tell you about that. So I'm going to switch over here to Norton, her husband. Greetings. Yes, you might say I was Marjorie's devoted husband. I think it was fun times for the most part. Others might say I should have stayed right on managing that Marion Hotel in Ocala. Might have saved me some tough times looking back, but no. Marion Marge 76 years ago, almost to this day, October 27, 1941, still was my most crowning achievement. Why else would anyone have remembered me at all? And how else could I have put so much excitement in my otherwise dull life? Anyway, I didn't spend much time in Cross Creek, but I knew how much she loved it, and that made me happy for her. I loved St. Augustine, and managing the Castle Warden Hotel was my passion. We certainly had good times with a lot of good friends there, and at Crescent Beach and Marineland. So Cross Creek did not have to mean as much to me as it did to her. Things happened, like the war and the trial, and all those great letters only she could write so well to keep me from getting too bored. So I managed to have a pretty good life for 12 years with her, and for over 40 more after that bad day in 1953. It seems like yesterday when we left St. Augustine and were crossing Highway 301 in Island Grove with me thinking, something is wrong here. I knew Marge wanted to go to Citra, where Tom Glisson was, but it seemed just too late to change the mistake. So we all came on to Antioch. I hope you don't mind the sand spurs all around here. They should just remind you of the lovely way Marjorie could write, like about the time the sand spurs got under her skirt and she just sat down and started screaming. That's really the way I saw living with her was at times. So instead of screaming, I just started singing and kept a screaming distance away from her. It worked out fine, and now I'm so glad to be here next to my beloved wife. Fairbanks. George Fairbanks was 75 years old when he came here. He was born in 1897 and he died in 1972. Here's what he might have said. How'd he do? I'm George Fairbanks. Yeah, I guess I do stutter a little bit. I always have, but that don't bother me none, and it sure didn't bother all them women were after me. Well, maybe it wasn't just me they were after, but maybe my wealth. I don't know. All I know is I had plenty of wealth. Because my family used to own half the land and woods and orange groves around Cross Creek. Along Orange Lake anyway. One of the ladies, finally talked me into marrying her. That sure was a mistake. She was not good to me. So I ran her off and went after my neighbor, Miss Rollins. She was about my age and lived by herself, so I figured she might be just right for me. I told her about my Victrola and my 25 records, but she was too busy writing about me to listen to my records. I think she must have liked me, because she got put right over there where she can keep an eye on me. All right, we'll go now to the Basses. Right here then. There it is. Okay, right here. This is Charles Bernie Bass. Hey, I'm Charles Bernie Bass. I was born in 1911, and I was only 17 years old when Miss Marjorie Rawlings came to Cross Creek. She was a writer, so she knew how to put me and my family in her book about Cross Creek. There sure weren't too many other folks around to write about. I really did not know her too good, only that she was a Yankee lady who came from somewhere up north and bought the old orange grove near my house. I lived in the big hammock nearby and had to walk up the road in front of her house with my sack full of fish to sell at Mr. Tom Glisson's. I never had much to say to her, so we barely spoke. I knowed she wrote books to help with her grove money. Them was mighty lean years, so I can tell you a thing or two about being short of money. I did not always have a paying job. It were Orange Lake that saved me and Teresa and my young'uns from starving during the Depression. But things did get a lot better at the creek, especially after the war. I reckon I did manage to save up a little bit of soldier's pay, enough to buy me a pickup truck. You know, Miss Rollins weren't the only one who had a wreck on that old road, but hers never was as bad as when I turned my pickup over back in 1969. I always wanted me a pickup, and look what it got me. The spot right here near Miss Rollins in Antioch. And by the way, be sure to check on the rest of them, Teresa, Bernie Lee, and Bernice. He's the Bernie Bass. Where does it say Teresa next? That was his wife, Teresa. She was 89 when she came here. Born in 1915, died in 2004. Hello, I'm Teresa Bass. It sure is a long way from London, England, where I was born, to Cross Creek. I'm happy to say I met my husband Bernie during the war over there, and he brought me back here to this lovely place called Cross Creek. Soon after we moved into an old tenant house in the hammock, cow hammock, I met Mrs. Rollins. In her book, Cross Creek, she told how we first met. Oh, that was a scary day. A woods fire was burning across the hammock and was getting too close to our house. I crammed and fought it all day by myself. But I knew I had to have help to save our house. So I ran as fast as I could over to Ms. Rollins' house and begged her for help. She rounded up her grown men, and they all ran over to fight the fire. It was hard and evil work, but we saved the clearing. We were fast friends after that. When I needed to borrow money or buy milk for my children, Ms. Rollins always was willing to help. All of us Basses outlived her, but a lot of us are all together here now, with some of the others from the creek. All right, we'll go to Bernie Lee, right here. This is? Mm-hmm. He was 79 when he came here in 2014. He was born in 1934, so he and I are about the same age. How do? My name is Bernie Lee Bass. My daddy was Bernie Bass, and my mama was Teresa Bass. I was born and raised in Cross Creek. Ms. Rollins wrote about all of us in her book, Cross Creek. She wrote a lot more about Mama and Daddy than she did me. But I want all of you to know what she said about me and how much I appreciate what she did for me. It were a matter of just a dime, but it meant much more than that to me and Mama. I was just 7 years old when I went off to school without my dime for my 2 nickel packages of Raisin Buns for lunch. You know I'd get mighty hungry going all day without my rations. My pa was low on work and didn't have no dime for me. So Mama went to ask Miss Rollins for help. She sure hated to ask, but she didn't want me to go starving all day either. Mama asked Miss Rollins if she would mind driving over to my school in Island Grove and bring me a dime. Mama promised to pay it back when she could. So Miss Rollins brought me a dime for lunch. Well, it was a year later, but Mama did pay it back. She went to buy some of Dora's milk and paid Miss Rollins 50 cents to cover the milk and the dime she owed. I'm so proud of my mom. That's her right over there. All right, let's go back up now to the Slater clock. I do. My name is Annie Slater. Ms. Rollins called me the Widow Slater, because that's what folks at the creek call me ever since my David died back in 1926. Remember, so Marjorie came in 28, David died in 26. I tell you, raising all these young'uns without no help from him was not easy. Ms. Rollins helped a lot with the work she gave me, even if it was just the washing. And I'm thankful for that. God did provide, just like he has put me here in Antioch with most of my chappies. And so close to Miss Rollins. She was a fine lady. God does work in mysterious ways. I came into this world in one piece, and thanks to his wonders, I went out the same way. She never let her doctor cut on her for example. It sure is pretty around here, so peaceful and quiet. For a long time there were just the Floxes around here, but seems like now the Sandspurs has took over. You know, folkses are kind of like that too. Some are Floxes and some are Sandspurs. You just have to live with them both. One thing I do miss out here is my boy Snow. Snow Slater, of course. I know he turned out well, especially after folks has woke up a catfish market. And after Miss Rollins gave him a job working in her grove. He's over with the Townsends now in the Townsend Cemetery, so I hope you all will go visit him too. Please shut the gate on the way out. It's a mighty hypocritical fence, so won't keep nobody out, but shut it anyway. That was one of her favorite words, was hypocritical. Y'all read the story. Hey there, my name is Rodney Slater. They call my mama the Widow Slater. I loved her very much because I was born crippled, and she had extra duty taking care of me that way. I loved her too for keeping me from getting all those shots. Y'all remember that story. She ran off the nurses. Oh, yeah. I love the way she ran that nurse off. But best of all, I was proud that she let me keep all my animal pets. At first she told me to take our old white-legged hen, which quit laying eggs, out in the woods and kill it. I tried my best and left it for dead, but when it came back home all crippled up and started laying again, she let me keep it for a pet. I had squirrels and other cross-creek creatures for my pets. I watched how they acted when the weather was about to change. They was always right, so folks thought I was the weatherman. I think Miss Rollins wrote about me in one of her books called The Yearling. She called me Fodder Wing. Even though I was crippled up a bit, those were happy years growing up around the creek. And even though my life was cut a little shorter than for most, I cherished every day of it. I was just 38. All right, Henry Slater. Where's Henry? Right here? Hey, I too was one of Willis Slater's chappies. That was what children were called in the Carolinas, where we came from. My brothers and sisters were Snow, Alva, Little Irene, and Rodney. Of course, I had an older sister in Alabama. Miss Rollins knew us all, especially Snow. She wrote about us in her book Cross Creek, and I'm proud of that. Just learning about watches just didn't get me much time on her pages. But it did help people in Gainesville keep on time. My little shop in Gainesville kept me happy for many years. And now I'm happy to be right here by Mama, Papa, and Rodney in Antioch, where time don't matter no more. That was Henry. That's all the Slater wrote about. All right, let's go to the Caissons.
Caissons are big ones.
Your favorite. Gonna start out with the most favorite, famous one, Zelma.
Oh, wait.
You all notice these plaques. They were put in by the Marjorie Kinnan Society at all of her characters that she wrote about. So you'll see one there. Hello, friends. Please don't be so surprised that Marjorie and I are so close together now. After all, that fuss at the trial. Look, there was a time when we were the best of friends. When she showed up in Florida, I was there for her. We were a lot alike, both of us had been to college, and she sure wouldn't find anybody else around Island Grove and Cross Creek who had any education at all. So we bonded right away. I helped her get a lot of material for writing her stories. That census write-up, The River Styx, was a good example. I showed her that the piano lady and all those pretty woods around the belt. Well, everything was just fine between us until that Dorsey showed up. Marge liked her so much she didn't seem to have any more use for me. Well, I could excuse that. But why race by my house in the middle of the night, honking the horn, going somewhere fun with that young floozy? That was just rubbing it in. I could even excuse that. But saying all the things she did about me in her book, Cross Creek, was just going too far. Maybe some of what she wrote was true, but it sure was not flattering. I just had to sue her. I would do it again. Call me ageless. Why, she knew my age. She knew that I was born in 1890 in Ziegler, Georgia. I'm sure I told her that. As for my cussing, well, we both did a little of that, right along with everybody else this part of the country. It was just the way folks talk. And where did all that money you made off my stories get you, Marjorie? Your spot over there is no prettier than mine. Well, anyway, even though you did get here 10 years before me, why, here we are, together again. I'm perfectly all right with that, if you are. Well, I know when you Rollins folks see that name Cason, you've got to be thinking about Zelma. Yeah, that's my daughter, Zelma, the one that didn't like all them things Marjorie wrote about her in that book, Cross Creek. Well, it didn't bother me none, because I reckon most of it was true. And you might say we was buddies. Marge would bring me over some liquor, and we would sit and talk. Nobody else would do that. And when she and Zelma got through counting all the people lived around here, I even killed my fattest possum and fixed her the best plate of possum she ever had. Zelma said Marge liked coon too, so I was going to fix her some of that too someday. Miss Piety and Leonard had fixed her some, but it were too strong, so mine would be a heap better. I think she was just trying to see how us cracker folks live, so she could write about us. Yeah, that was all right with me. Hello, I'm Turner Ziegler Cason. Most of you know me as TZ. You probably would not know me at all if Marjorie Rawlings had not mentioned me in her Cross Creek book as her doctor. Yes, I had the honor of treating her on several occasions at Riverside Hospital in Jacksonville. We became acquainted after my sister, Zelma, brought her over to Island Grove in 1928. In my opinion, Marjorie's health problems were related more to her heavy drinking and smoking habits than the high stress of writing. I really can't comment on her ailments due to my doctor and patient confidentiality policy. But I can say I once had some fun treating her at the Riverside Hospital. We both love mangoes, so one time I brought some of the fruit to her room and we had a feast. We both gorged ourselves and agreed that nothing that good could possibly hurt her now. I'm glad to be right here in Antioch along with her and so many others in my family, including mine and Zelma's father, B.T., and Mother Charity. Howdy, I'm Marjorie's Grove man, Chester Crosby. Just call me Chet. Like Marjorie Rollins and all the others around Cross Creek and Island Grove did. Since I lived at Island Grove, it was just a short piece over to her orange grove for taking care of it for her. Marge didn't include me in her book Cross Creek because I took over the grove after the book was written. By the time she hired me, she was tired of struggling with the grove so much and wasn't writing about the creek anymore. I think the trial with Zelma sort of soured her on that. I was involved with an orange packing business, so guess I knew a little about citrus. I was 6 years younger than her, and at age 45, I still could handle grove work and an occasional fishing trip out on Orange Lake with her. Wasn't long after that she passed on, and that was a sad time for a lot of people, including me. Howdy do. I'm Tom Morrison of Cross Creek. Marjorie Rollins called me the Creek Horatio. I don't know what that means exactly, but I do know I am proud that she put me in her book Cross Creek. I know it has something to do with the way I stood up to Marsh Turner. Yeah, I felt like giving him a good whacking with my walking stick for the way he was riding around on his crazy horse over the bridge, hooping and hollering. Why, neither him nor me owned a speck of land around the creek, not even enough to get buried in. So where did he get off acting like he owned the creek? He did not, and if anybody did, it was old boss, young miss, and Joe McKay. If he hadn't turned back, you bet I'd have laid some hickory on him real good. Miss Rollins sure did it right when she said it's the redbirds that owns it, along with the wind and the rain, and beyond all, to time. Hello, I'm Sally Morrison Smith. I'm quite sure folks will not know me, but you will know my famous daughter, Dorsey Smith Prescott. We both lived in Island Grove, which is close to Cross Creek where Marjorie Rollins lived. Dorsey and Marjorie became real close friends and spent a lot of time together. Most of you will remember their boat trip on the St. Johns River. Marjorie wrote about it and called it Hyacinth's Drift. Even as a little girl, Dorsey loved to be outside, and I had trouble keeping up with her in the woods, where she was always wanted to be. No, Dorsey is not here with Marjorie and me, but it sure would be nice if she were. I'll just keep on being happy to be here with all the Cross Creek folks, like the Basses, the Slaters, and old George Fairbanks, and the Island Grovers like the Caissons and old Chet Crosby. I wonder who will be coming in next.
So what made you do this?
Well, Donna, I'm not sure. My memory is so bad now that I'm 82 years old. I don't remember things all that well. But I do remember coming here at the request of the Marjorie Rawlings Society back when Bill was, I can't remember his last name, but he was president of the society, and he came over. We had a bus that met at the Marjorie Rawlings house, and then left, and we came out here, and Bill and his wife and two sisters, as I recall, came with a group, about 25 people. And so that was the first tour that I remember. Then on the 75th celebration, year celebration of the yearling, which now, what was that, 4 years ago or 2 years ago, we did it again at the request of the farm board. So I came out, and we had a little group that came. That was one of the activities that showed up. And then we did it this past year at the request of the farm board in celebration of the 75th year of Cross Creek, the writing of Cross Creek. So I know I've done it 3 times. And of course, the people haven't changed. Nobody's come and nobody's gone. So it's always the same.
How much time did you put into looking up all that research?
Well, it takes several days off and on. You work on you work on Marjorie, for example. You get it done in the night, and then the next night you might do Norton Baskin, and you kind of put it together. It might be a week before you get it all done. And of course, when the tour comes, you have to have the plaques, not the plaques, but the little page indicators that you would put beside each grave. You have to find the graves, and of course, back when we were first coming, there were sand spurs here, and we had to give them booties to put on their shoes to keep sand spurs off of their socks. So it takes a little bit of doing to do a tour.
You like history, though, huh?
But I like this because, you see, I'm a cracker Floridian, and that's what Marjorie wrote about. So when I found out about Cross Creek, even though I'm from South Florida, if she would have come to my county, which was Hardee County, down around Wauchula, I'm sure she would have written the same kind of things that she wrote about the Townsends, about the Stevens. Because we had hookworms, I had hookworms, and I didn't want to take my medicine, neither did the Townsend children. And we had orange groves and grew vegetables, and of course we lived out in the woods. So I've always been attracted to anything Marjorie Rollins, because even though she was from New York and was a Yankee, she didn't like to be called a Yankee. She wrote about my kind of lifestyle, and so I've been a fan of hers ever since. And when something like a tour like this comes about, and they ask me to help with that, especially back when I was on the farm board and I was helping more, this was a kind of an activity that I could do, and I still enjoy it.
Now, there's a lot of tongue-in-cheek comments in your writing. I mean, there's some real humorous. There's a lot of humor to the truth of what she wrote.
Marjorie included a lot of humor in what she wrote, that's for sure. Not just in her books, but if you read her letters, wow, there's where the humor is. I don't know if you call that funny about Tom Morrison, being called the Creek Horatio, because he would take his walking stick and beat on old Marsh Turner for things that Marsh did with his animals. To me, that's sort of humorous, but it's funny, but it's the way that she wrote. She wrote things that I like to pass on to people.
I like the way she ended the pound party in Cross Creek because she tried so hard to think she was helping the Townsends with their hookworm medicine. And, and then she writes in there how Miss Townsend said, you can't trust nothing that's free, and the clothes. And then at the end, she talked about how it was her that learned from the Townsends.
Oh, yes. That was her most famous quote about the Townsend was that it was she that learned from the Townsends, not Townsend learned from her. And that was the truth. That's the kind of humor, the humor that was passed on from the Townsends, the knowledge that was passed on about fishing and looking towards taking hookworm medicine, for example. The Townsend didn't want to take the hookworm medicine because they didn't like it. That's funny, but it's the philosophy that we country folks live by. You didn't mind having hookworms. You liked that better than taking that medicine that made you sick.